people who MCs the meeting. The Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle promotes the use of reason and science in the search for and commitment to living an ethical life that benefits all humanity. We believe that personal inquiry, responsibility, and accountability are the best bases for ethical decision-making. Our weekly forums seek to broaden our understanding of ethics and human nature, and our congregational community encourages us to share diverse opinions, friendship, and camaraderie. We welcome everyone to share in our journey. If you would like more information about our community, please let me know following the platform. We also have a visitor sign-up sheet and some literature on the greeters table. Since we are a community, we take time out at the beginning of our meetings to share any joys and concerns.
Myself and Jan and Dorothy and Jennifer, Jennifer's not here today. And so we have 4 votes in the assembly to influence the decisions, because the assembly is when the American Ethical Union makes its decisions about what it's going to do for the next year or coming year or so. And so this year, a lot of changes are in the works. There are several major designs for how to reorganize AEU. There's a bunch of people who are concerned that AEU, like many other organizations, including religious organizations, are declining in membership, and they are looking for ways to reinvigorate AEU, make it a more responsive organization to the individual societies of which we are a member society. So I'm not going to go through all the scenarios that they've got. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 or so, and they've been fluctuating. So if you're interested and want to look at what's going on there, because they are our parent organization, we do pay dues to them. Take a look at the website for the American Ethical Union. If you Google AEU Assembly, the easiest way to find it is to do that, and you will see, I would Google AEU Assembly 2023, and you will see the agenda, you will see all the scenarios for people who are looking for ways to reorganize AEU. And if you have any interest whatsoever in promoting or not any of the particular scenarios or candidates running for the board of AEU, as well as the president of the board, feel free to talk to myself, Dorothy, Jan, or Jennifer, and give us your opinion. We would love to hear from you. So I'll basically stop there. We have a plan to send around an email to give you links to those websites directly, and Dorothy will send that out to everybody. And so does anybody have any questions about any or all that? All right. That's fine. And so I will turn the program back over to Dorothy to, I believe, introduce our speaker and do opening, closing words and stuff like that.
So Jay, you're up.
This is another one of those Sundays when the topic does not lend itself very much to humor. So I no humor about despots and authoritarian regimes, but I did find some interesting observations. Voltaire said, "Tyrants have always some slight shade of virtue. They support the laws before destroying them. Voltaire also said, clever tyrants are never punished. Bill Moyers reflected that secrecy is the freedom tyrants dream of. Henry Wallace, FDR's vice president, said, it is no coincidence that the growth of modern tyrants has in every case been heralded by the growth of prejudice. That's pretty true. Diogenes said long before that, the mob is the mother of tyrants. And there's key words here that we can relate to what is going on in certain parts of the world and our own country. Bill Clinton more recently said, the road to tyranny, we must never forget, begins with the destruction of the truth. Does that sound like something that's relevant? Albert Camus said, the welfare of the people in particular has always been the alibi of tyrants. Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and the blood of tyrants. And George Orwell said, despotic governments can stand moral force till the cows come home. What they fear is physical force. French socialist philosopher Charles Fournet said, despots prefer the friendship of the dog, who, unjustly mistreated and debased, still loves and serves the man who wronged him. And finally, John Adams' wife, First Lady Abigail Adams, said, do not put unlimited power into the hands of husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could.
Thank you, Jay. That's the first time I've ever heard the quote from Thomas Jefferson include not just the blood of patriots, but the blood of tyrants, which is interesting. That is usually left off, at least in my hearing. The
Jefferson quote, Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and with tyrants.
And I think that patriots part was, widely commented on for January 6th. That was they were all patriots, but yeah, both sides. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Atish, our speaker today. Most of you know Atish because he's been a member here for a number of years now. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm winging it, but I do know that Atish is a scientist. He has a PhD in physics and he works for AstraZeneca. And he was first introduced to ethical culture in St. Louis, where he was a member and met his lovely wife. And they transplanted here and found a society, and we are really pleased that that happened. Atish is also a contrarian. I'm just going to put that out there. But he's going to speak to us today about the rise of authoritarian regime. And Atish is also Indian American, so I think that you probably have some perspective based on the current leader of India. So welcome, Atish.
Something? Your wife, actually. Oh dear. I'm going to go. I don't know whether this will reach. Oh. Okay. It did. All right. Rise of authoritarian regimes. Why so many like that? Here, I'm going to follow Gene. Here, I'm going to follow Gene Kirkpatrick's split of what is authoritarianism and what is totalitarian, which is a. That's okay. Okay. So I'm not talking about the sort of the bona fide registered totalitarian regimes like China and North Korea and places, and primarily those two. So I'm talking about countries that have, in the past, have had progressive democracies and now are at various times reverted to authoritarian strongman, authoritarian regimes usually led by a strongman. Okay. Let's see. Authoritarianism. Authoritarianism. These are some of the common qualities that define authoritarian regimes. You know, there is limited political pluralism. There is contempt for constitution and law that are at odds with their ideology. One of the main manifestation of this is treatment of minorities. Essentially, I say minorities, but it is sort of them is the operative word. Political legitimacy based on emotion and identification of the regime as a necessary evil to combat, easily recognizable. It's like, okay, you may not like us, like what we do, but it would be worse if we weren't there. The country would descend into chaos without stating that they would probably be the agent who will push the country into chaos. Where was I? Yeah, minimal political mobilization, suppression of dissent, absolutely do not have any tolerance for dissent, even in the little. Suppression of freedom of thought and speech. Anybody who speaks out against them is a subversive or a traitor. And also they very much despise progressive intellectuals. I mean, you should not be under any false pretense that there are right-wing intellectuals who will support authoritarian regimes. I mean, our think tanks, there are think tanks in DC are full of them. One of them also they don't do is suppression of news, reporters. The reporters who report against them are either hounded, violence is, there's violence against them, and even in some cases just outright killed. Though in those instances, you will never trace it back to the leader. It is his, they have a group of people who do all these things, and the belief is that the orders are given in verbally. There is no thing that, oh, go kill somebody. It's like the famous case of Cardinal Wolsey, if you remember, where I don't remember who the King of England was frustrated by Wolsey's opposition to his policies, and in the court said that, well, why won't some of you gentlemen get rid of this nuisance? So 3 of the knights rode out to Cambridge and beheaded Wolsey. So there was one of the famous case where the king did not take any responsibility, but essentially instigated that assassination. Overreaching executive powers. They do powers by just executive in many instances, subjugation of judiciary, and concentrate a lot of power in the executive, mostly by that one single person and a small quarter of people around him or her. Okay. One of the things that is a very hallmark of this authoritarian paradigm is worship of past glory. And in all of these instances I will talk about, that is one of the main motivations, is that we were great once and somebody subjugated us, and somehow, and with me, you will reach that same height of glory. Okay. And that goes along with revisionist history. I already talked about control of news and suppression of manipulation of inconvenient truths by denial and manufacturing news, especially in the internet and social media. And that I will talk about when I talk about India. It is frightening how they have captured the social media to spread their propaganda. Cronyism and corruption, or crony capitalism, that's another hallmark. Friends and preferred supporters get preferred treatment, easy access to state funding and contracts. Not that it doesn't happen otherwise, but this is like in every instance this happens. I mean, you cannot, it's almost go hand in hand, that they are supported by some very rich people who just get richer and richer with their association. Excuse me, my allergies are just... Emphasis on military, good grief, they are very, very militaristic. You know, and I will talk about that in all cases, it's almost a worship of the military power. Generation of paranoia, they generate a whole situation of paranoia by claiming internal and external conspiracies. And usually such authoritarian regime in the end degrade economically. Economic degradation is almost always seen, that they screw up the economy. I mean, they make a mess of the economy, and the guy next coming and has to then pull it out and takes all the blame. And then in turn the blame is put on the person who is following. And cult of the leader. This almost sounds like AEU, but anyway, there is a cult of the leader. There's a cult around the leader, whoever it is. Now, if you have any questions, please ask. Okay, I don't want to wait till the end and then people forget what. Sorry, speak slowly, right. Oh, wait till I go through the next ones. Now, authoritarianism is on a scale, you know, not all authoritarian leaders they go from who are mildly authoritarian to who are mostly authoritarian, comes from self-righteousness. A classic case was Indira Gandhi. You know, she was very self-righteous, and that's where she got some of her authoritarian streak. But she did not undermine the constitution, but she did the same things, throw people in jail and things like that. But some of the worst things she did not do. This is the democracy index by the Economist Intelligence Unit of 2022. The green countries are democratic. The dark ones are liberal versus the light, which are illiberal. You can recognize some of the countries that are illiberal. And this is what I thought was interesting. You see Canada and you see United States. Okay. United States and India have the same colors, whereas Canada, Australia, most of Western Europe have similar colors. Okay. And then the yellow ones are hybrid regimes. They are sort of go back and forth. You know, they may have a constitutional democracy, but the democracy is highly flawed because of the authoritarian nature of the executive. And the red ones are just plain authoritarian governments. And incidentally, Russia comes in there, China comes in there, North Korea comes in there. Some of the Central Asian countries, Central European countries, African countries come in there who are highly regressive. So now I'm going to do some.
So a little green patch on the west coast of, I'm sorry.
We have a Zoom audience as well.
Sorry. Atish, I just noticed that light green patch on the west coast of Africa, and I'm really curious if you know which country that is. I could probably look it up.
Yeah.
I
have to look at the map. I'm not sure which one that is. This one.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
That really dark red, the red one off the coast of Miami is Cuba. The one on the north of South America is Venezuela. Okay,
What's the other TV network?
along Cuba, I think, I don't know, it's Honduras, not Honduras, Nicaragua. Well, but Nicaragua is here. Oh, that's Venezuela. Yes, that's Nicaragua. You're right. Okay, this is a exercise in world geography. Okay. Yemen is dark red. Saudi Arabia is reddish. Some of these West Asian countries, their designation, it escapes me as to how they're doing it. So I don't know which one is Israel. I didn't have the time to go through all of the map to check which country is what. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So US is lighter, light green compared to Canada, Australia. What, so our wonderful democracy, I thought we're democratic and not authoritarian. Why are we
You are considered an
Why are we-
democracy.
where we are?
Why are you where we are? That is something for Americans to answer. Why are you where you are?
Say again?
I said that is for something the Americans to answer. Why are where you are? I can tell you why we are in India. Why are where you are?
But we're not
Just because
authoritarian.
you're a democracy does not mean that you have to be dark green.
But it's not authoritarian.
No, it is not. As all it is called is that it's an illiberal democracy. And it's not, you're not very far from being an authoritarian state. The 2024 election could very well make that a reality. So I'm going to deal with 4 countries. There are a lot more, some of the, but these 4 countries have serious implications globally and regionally. Okay. Our friend. Okay. The descent of United States into sort of an authoritarian regime was absolute horrifying to the rest of the world. Trump showed all the characteristics, extolling the virtues of slavery and Jim Crow, alt news, alt clarity, pushing false paradigms like drink bleach to get rid of COVID, There was definitely a cult around the leader. Remember, if some of you are old enough to remember that when he first came on, he insisted that his cabinet take a personal oath of allegiance to him. And those who refused were dropped. I don't know if you remember that. It was a big stink. Contempt for constitution and laws that place limits on power. Corruption and cronyism and foreign policy. He had a pay to play foreign policy. Countries that gave his companies or his daughter's companies, which were essentially his companies, lucrative contracts, suddenly were buddies. If not, then he would threaten retaliation against them of some form. He had a concept of racial superiority. The Huns were on the top of the ladder and the disdain for others. He clearly considered even the European stock greater, the Teutonic stock at the top, the other, this Central and Southern Europe next, and then the Eastern Europe. Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I think you might add to your list, in addition to disdain for others, is an active persecution of others.
Yes.
And this probably also goes on your other list earlier as a characteristic of authoritarian regimes.
Yes.
You can look at almost every single one and identify some group that they found they could unite people against.
Well, he found
and make a myth that those
was
people are evil. And I think Trump, when he came into power, was pursuing anti-Muslim policies.
Well, anti-Muslim policies, anti-immigration policies, except for him and his kids, I think he was as less anti-everything.
But I mean, I think that's a common
That's a very
feature.
common thread.
That's a common thread. I think
I'm
it's
sorry,
more
I
than,
forgot
more than
that.
just disdain for
I forgot
others.
that should have been on the
It's an
list.
active persecution.
Absolutely. Then again, he was very militaristic, militancy, wanted to nuke defiant nations, if you remember. At one point, there was in the private conversation saying, what is the point of me being president with 3,000 nukes if I can't nuke them? Okay, I think that actually his generals talked him out of it. Okay, January 6th was another case. You know, he claimed he did not instigate it, but clearly now it shows that he did instigate that. And he's always kept that thing on, denial of the election result on, and which was the subtext of that was the January 6th. And there's who said that there were patriots, they're considered patriots, all that whole story that goes along with it. I mean, these are not just individual actions. There is a whole narrative that is built around these issues. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to talk about heard on NPR this morning, King of Thailand, who's been there for 36 years, is retiring and his son is taking over. So that's how that's authoritative. But we have term limits. Maybe Trump had 4 years of Trump, but he's out. And so we have
but
someone
he can
else.
come back. I mean, that's what I was going to show, that in many cases they can come back because so many people like them.
Yes.
I mean, don't underestimate that 70+ million Americans voted for him.
But he won't be there for 34 years.
No, he will not.
No.
But the king is hereditary. So the kingship is hereditary. I mean, is the monarchy of England then a problem because they are hereditary, or Japan, or Belgium, or Sweden, or any of these?
Yeah, but it's not. You don't go to jail for insulting the King of England. You will in Thailand if you insult the king. I mean,
Yes,
it is
so
pretty
a lot of the
authoritative.
king there. So will happen if you are in Saudi Arabia. And why? Yes, you did. Okay. Now, Trump did lose in 2020 election, but the fact that 70+ million people voted for him was quite disconcerting. Okay. He still denies the election results and to his supporters. And he does control the GOP and the Supreme Court. There is no doubt about it at this point. And he may be back in 2024. And I remember him in his first term have made comments like the term limit should go. So if he goes back with enough majority and GOP comes into majority again, he may try to do away with it. My favorite. Narendra Damodar Modi. His authoritarian is again supported by the citizenry, media, legislature, and judiciary. All these are common themes with Trump and him. And there is a lot of common, when I speak, I'll tell you, there's a lot of commonality. These guys are sort of twin separated at birth. Same thing. His thing is religion and caste. Muslims is the big thing. I mean, that is how they came to power, is saying that this is a majority Hindu country. But why do Hindus live like a minority? That caught fire. And a lot of that had to do with the previous Congress governments. That their action really, for 30 years or more, 40 years, came to a point where even people who I know better at one point started believing in his stories. People in my family, people in my friends. There are many friends I don't talk to anymore because I can't stand the bastards. Muslims this, Muslims that. And I said, no Muslim has ever hurt me in India for 24+ years, around 24 years that I lived there. Whatever conflicts I had, I was actually had with Hindus. So that is the story, and the previous Congress government hasn't helped. Because it was felt that they catered to the Muslims, and they were like the government of the Muslims, by the Muslims, for the Muslims, basically. And that is a very big caste, because BJP is a very caste-based party. It is party of the upper castes. Not that other people aren't, other parties aren't, like Congress and others, but they are entrenched. They make no secret of it. The assault and on the lower caste has gone up significantly since he has come to power. Again, nothing can be traced back to the local hoodlums doing it, but really not. They're too connected. Yes.
I have a question. What is the role of the judiciary in India and constitutional laws that you have listed? Contempt for constitution and laws that place limits on power. How does the judiciary work? Does that compare with our Supreme Court here?
Okay. Traditionally, the Indian judiciary, the Supreme Court or any other judiciary, they don't have life appointments. There is a retirement age. I don't remember what it is, but it is somewhere around 60, 65. So the Chief Justice of India or any of the justices of the Supreme Court are not there for 30, 40 years. They're gone maybe 5 years. By the time they get to the nominated to the Justice Supreme Court, they're already probably 55, 57. So they're not there for that long. Okay, that is one major difference. Second difference, traditionally, it has been very strange that it didn't matter who appointed that particular justice to the Supreme Court. It ended up that all the justices seemed to work independently. They didn't, I mean, the government, maybe 150% of the cases. Okay. And definitely always lost the free speech cases. Now, he has appointed, his appointees are more right-wing and more in line with his political philosophy. So though they are still doing sometimes, pushing back on the government, it has become less. Like one of the famous cases is that, as I think, is that if you're anti-government, then they'll arrest you and say you are involved in some sedition. And there was one famous case. They dragged this reporter, very respected reporter, to an event all the way to Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court said that just because he has Karl Marx's book on his shelf doesn't make him a communist. No more than you having Gandhi's autobiography make you a Gandhian. And so all these, some of these cases, so that though it is much less, but the Supreme Court is still drawing the line in many instances, especially free speech instances and all these, sedition. And unfortunately, India retained the sedition laws from the British times. They should have never been there. Blasphemy laws and things like that were all retained from the British times, and they should have all gone. Unfortunately, they haven't. Cronyism and corruption. He has got a quite of extremely rich businessmen around him, some of whose names you may have heard. He was in the news some months ago. Gautam Adani. He meteoric rise to become the second richest person in the world after Elon Musk. But then it was found that he had been manipulating stocks and doing all sorts of shady things. But he's still in the top 10. I mean, it's not that he's gone. Very, very controversial figure. All his business dealings have been controversial. His mining dealings in Australia, his dealings in India. Now he's going into manufacturing of military hardware, and people are saying, what does he know about military hardware? Why is he's getting all the contracts? Worst is that hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of unsecured loans from the state, which will never going to get paid back. There is another guy, Ambani, same situation. Ambani is a little smarter than Adani. So he does not want to be the richest man in the world. 15, 16 will do fine. 11 is even better. But he is nowhere. At one point, he was the richest man in Ambani was the richest man in, may still be in Asia. Okay. But his business is all high tech, so he has got a slightly different aura, but no different. So this is one of the problems. Military. India now is the biggest importer of arms in the world. We buy arms from Russia, United States, France, Israel, now Germany, UK, maybe even Korea, South Korea, Japan. No, all these arms are to fight China. Don't go to India and say China. Manipulation of social media, intimidation by violence. This is the one big thing. Glory of Hindu India. The Islamic invasion began around, well, started in 800 AD, but really around 1000 AD. So it is a big theme for them that we were glorious, and then this Muslims came and subjugated us for something like 800 years, and then the Brits came. Okay, so you work with me. I will restore India to its original glory, Hindu glory. Okay, how they would accommodate Muslims is not very clear. Some of the more virulent ones say we will throw them out, but you can't displace 240 million Muslims. So that they very cleverly, some people say, oh, they will all reconvert back into Hinduism. No, so. So he does promise return to glory, not only culturally, but economically, science, technology, medicine, space. He's surprisingly big into green energy. He has mandated that by 2030, there'll be no fully petrol or gasoline cars available in India. They'll all have to be hybrid or electric. And Indian companies are producing amazing rate electric cars, electric motorcycles, electric scooters. It is quite surprising. I mean, that he has surprised me there. He's put a lot of money in space exploration. A few days ago, ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization, launched the third trip to moon. And they're going to put a lander on the south pole of the moon. That is the intent. Okay. So, but if you read this and what I told you about Trump, there are a lot of commonalities here. He's a very charismatic, popular figure. In India, they recently did a poll, like every year do, and to see how popular he was. He was better than 76% popular in the country. So just imagine 1.4 billion, 76 or 1.4 billion people are, like him. He was elected in 2014 and 2019. He will win 2024. There is no question. Nobody believes it. The worst is that he will probably win in a landslide. And that landslide could make his majority in the parliament a super majority that is greater than 76% or 67, 2/3. And that will give him the power to change the constitution as he wishes. The same thing, Trump wants. But he didn't have it because that he didn't have the supermajority. But if he has a majority in both the houses, he can do it. In the parliamentary system, he just needs that sort of majority in it's called Lok Sabha, equivalent to your House of Representatives or the House of Commons. Okay, it's very similar to the House of Commons, the functioning of. Okay, but the thing that is going for him, that he has put a lot of effort, a lot of its strong arm efforts into developing the economy. He has taken the Indian economy to now, which is now considered the 5th largest economy in the world after United States, China, Japan, and Germany. He has he's taken India past France, UK, all these people. The World Bank recently came out with the studies that their prediction is that it will be the 3rd largest economy by 2030. And Goldman Sachs put another one saying that they think that India will be the 2nd largest economy by 2050.
Who will be first?
China. Okay. I don't quite believe that. Because if you say the gap is so big, even between China and the United States, unless the United States has a multi-year recession and instead of growing by 2%, 3%, it starts decreasing by 5-7%. That gap is just huge. Maybe 2100, I don't know, but I can't see that happening. Either China or India surpassing the United States. But you should see how they tout that. I mean, I look at what is it called? YouTube. Oh, I look at YouTube for news from India. BJP has an enormous cell of IT people, media people, YouTube people, internet people, putting out their propaganda unendingly, day after day after day, or hour after hour after hour. Okay, they have absolutely saturated the whole internet and YouTube, and Twitter. And why do you think Elon Musk loves Indians so much? Because they give so much business to him. Or WhatsApp. Indians are the largest user of WhatsApp. There's a selfish reason for that because you don't pay for anything. But so they have completely saturated. They have a whole. Sorry, go ahead. They have a whole network of. Yes, sir.
Does Moody only need the legislature in order to change the
Yes.
Constitution?
In the
There's no
parliamentary
plebiscite.
system-
No plebiscite is necessary
No,
or
in the
agreement in
parliamentary
the
system,
states.
you only need that supermajority in the lower house of the parliament.
Thank you.
Are there term limits in India?
In the parliamentary system, there are absolutely no term limits. So he has already, next year it will be 10 years for him. He could easily go another 5 years. Now, his age may put a halt to that, but no, there are no trying. Indira Gandhi served for 13 years. Her father, Nehru, served. Jawaharlal Nehru was the prime minister for 15 years. So, look at how long Maggie Thatcher was there or Blair was there. I mean, the parliamentary system, you do not have term limits. So, this guy scares me more than Trump. Because of the nature of the person and the nature of the people and the nature of the citizenry, it's going to be very hard to stop him because the opposition is in complete disarray. I mean, his main opposition leader is Rahul Gandhi, who is generally treated as a joke in the country. Their popular name for him in Hindi is called Papu. Papu means a spoiled brat. That is not good for his chances of becoming the prime minister. And the other thing, he really is, in some ways, a spoiled brat. He comes from a very well-known and rich family. He hasn't done a thing in his life. He was not even successful in getting his bachelor's degree. He went from institution to institution, failing out. He started in my college, dropped out, went to Cambridge, dropped out, Our favorite man. If you have been noticing, the names of the countries are the colors of their flags. I could not do white very well, so sort of a facsimile of white because of the regular. So United States is red, white, and blue. India is saffron, white, and green. Russia is red, blue, and white. White, red, and blue. It is red, white, red, blue. Same thing. Now, Putin surprisingly has support of the citizens of Russia. They do believe that he is going to restore them back into the glory days of Soviet Union. Putin has said the worst day of his life has been the day Soviet Union ended. That was his worst day of his life. And he blames people like Gorbachev and Yeltsin and people like that for that debacle. So he has absolute control over the state. I mean, Putin, of these three people, Putin comes closest to an absolute leader. Again, there's a lot of false propaganda. There's a big cult around Putin. Putin projects himself as omniscient, omnipotent. Oh, I wrote it twice. Or an omnipresent, sorry. I mean, I joke that Chris is our omniscience member, but he's nowhere close to Putin. Now, remember, Putin used to be the head of KGB before. And there's a joke around Putin that if you notice, he always, whenever he walks, he never swings his right arm. His right arm is like this all the time. And apparently that is an old KGB technique. that you never swing your right arm so that you can reach for your gun instantly. See, you guys should pay attention to international news. There's a lot of humor in this.
Maybe Trump figured that out.
Yeah. No. Again, contempt for constitution and law that limits his power, very corrupt. You know, all this, you hear about all these oligarchs. There are two types of oligarchs. The oligarchs who support him are getting richer and richer. Now that they have put, United States has put sanctions on them. But then the oligarchs who are against him all suddenly die mysteriously one by one. Military, Crimea and Ukraine, right on the map. Okay. And again, his hook is glory of USSR and Russia, because he says that the USSR and Russia have been subjugated by Western Europe and NATO. And this whole Crimean Ukrainian thing started is when Ukraine wanted to be a part of NATO. That's when he said, you try to do that, I'm going to march into Ukraine. And people didn't believe him, and he did. Now, his leadership is interesting. He first became the president in 2000. He was there for 2 terms. Okay, it's a 4-year term. Then he had to quit. But what he did was that he became the prime minister and put a puppet, Mendeleev, for 4 years. Came back 2012 to present. Now, his 2 terms would have been ended in 2020. In 2020, he became the president for life. He got the parliament to make him the president of life. So there are no more presidential elections. In my opinion, the only way he will be removed is either he dies naturally or by a coup. I do not see any other way he is getting dethroned. And the more losses he takes in Ukraine, that may end up being the trigger. Okay. It's a failing economy. That is again a big thing. They don't quite have it yet, but soon I think if it continues, they'll start having shortages. It may not go back to the Soviet era that you had to line up to buy 1 roll of paper towel, but our next strongman, Erdogan of Turkey. He's again a very controversial figure. He has the support of a large section of his population, media, legislature, military. He wants absolute control of the state, little tolerance for dissent, which I will link to the very last point. If you remember, there was a failed coup attempt in 2016, and he blamed the opposition for it, and he jailed thousands of professors, intellectuals, media people, on and on and on. And some of them mysteriously died in jail. And I don't think so. Most of them have still been released. Alt news, very good at spreading false propaganda, as all of them are. He also doesn't like limits of power. Military is very militaristic. He probably has the most powerful military, the Pakistan games they have, but probably most effective and powerful military in the Muslim world. He intervened in Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict for Azerbaijan. And that was very controversial because Turkey is a part of NATO. So all the hardware he used in Azerbaijan were all NATO hardware. So indirectly, he got NATO into that conflict. Okay. He is trying to be the next Ottoman Sultan. There is no question about it. Turkey used to be a fairly secular country, but he has pushed Turkey, running too late. He has pushed Islam in Turkey because he realized that the secular part of the country was towards the west, towards the Bosphorus, along the Bosphorus and on either side of Bosphorus, the European part of Turkey and that there was secular, but the interior was all very Islamic, the Muslims. And that's where a lot of his power comes from. Okay. And he has extolled the glory of the Ottoman Empire, though if you read the history of Ottoman Empire, they're pretty shitty. And But he has given them, or he has indirectly made that promise that I will make it this the next Ottoman Empire. He tried to do that by seizing control of the Organization of Islamic Countries. Then he, Pakistan and Malaysia, and never figured out why Malaysia tried to do that. And then the West Asian countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and all pushed very hard, very back. So he got into a little pickle. Now he's trying to make up his relationship with the West Asian oil states. Okay. And I can see he and Pakistan doing it because they consider themselves the most powerful Muslim countries. Okay. So he won a divisive election in 2023. The first phase of election was a divisive, but then there was a runoff with the main opposition candidate. But there he won by a huge margin. If you remember that Turkish woman who came to us for a few weeks ago, she also mentioned it. That he, in the runoff, he had double-digit margins. So, but he had to have a runoff because he didn't have a, but he couldn't get an absolute good, clear majority in the first round. But between the first round and the second round, so whatever he did, he convinced the population that he was the guy, and the other, the guy against him was again an intellectual. Okay. And that is what is happening, is that you cannot be an intellectual and oppose these strongmen. They appeal to the emotion, like Trump did with the MAGAs and all that sort of thing. They appeal to the emotion of the people rather than intellectual discourse. And that is where they're successful. His economy is in shambles because of the devastation caused by the earthquake. The lira is in almost free fall, but they still voted for it. So now I finally come to Fred's topic. What is the attraction? Now this you might please contribute, all of it. The way I see is that all these leaders are charismatic sociopath strongmen. Can spin a glorious story that is, in many cases, if not all false, but I would say at least 50% false. Okay. But they appeal to the disaffected and the disenfranchised who are looking for a stake in the country. They are in dire economic states. They want somebody to blame, so they're ripe for exploitation. And they are promised a sense of superiority. You are the son of soil, not those guys in Wall Street or Silicon Valley. Masses are fed a vision of future that they want to hear. MAGA, make America great again. In India, it is Akhand Bharat, which means a united India, which essentially is a code name for Hindu empire. Okay. And etc. I don't know about Turkey so much, but I'm pretty sure there are things like that in Russia and Turkey. That's very, very common. Traditionally are identified as a source of all problems. Blacks in the US, Muslims in India, Western Europe, and NATO in Russia, EU in Turkey. Turkey can't blame NATO because they're a part of it. So though they are not in the North Atlantic, they're pretty far from that. So what they do is they spin an authoritarian paradigm as the only way to reclaiming success and glory. Okay, because these people are they're looking for a way out. They're looking for a way up the socioeconomic ladder. But the problem is that the neoliberal policies that came before them failed for them in many ways. Whether it be Barack Obama or Manmohan Singh or whosoever, failed. They failed to deliver to the lowest sections of the society. They were very good for the educated middle class, upper middle class. Okay. So the rural, the poor, the low on the SES totem pole, they just completely missed. And nothing made it more clear to me in the 2016 election within Hillary Rodham Clinton and Trump. Trump appealed to them, to the lower, the unaffected people, disaffected people, gave them a complete false story, but he made them the center of attention. Hillary Rodham Clinton had no connection to them, almost ignored them. Protection of traditional values, that's a big thing. Somehow that the traditional values need to be protected or should be protected. Okay. And that also is connected to the privilege. Okay. In India, Brahmins, the warrior classes, they were on top. Okay. I mean, I am a sort of a virulent atheist, as I call myself, what is it called? A jihadi ethical humanist. But my background is a very high caste. That caste were doctors and teachers traditionally. So it will be amazing how many people from that old caste are in that profession. So that is what it is, and that is the whole concept of this Sanatan Dharma that is called in India. White Christian nation, I see it over and over and over again. I did not hear it so much when I first came to the United States or the intervening years, but lately I've been hearing that all the time. Traditional Islam, again, the same thing. And that also turns into the culture war. So it's a big culture war. Now, that's where I'm going to end, but I need your questions, comments, additional rants and raves.
And
Gordon has.
if you would wait for the microphone, if you have a question, we'll try and get to you in order. We'll start over here and work around. John.
Yeah, Atish, I was a little surprised in your last slide that you said that the traditional enemies identified by Trump are blacks in the U.S. Trump came on strong against immigrants, much more against immigrants than against blacks.
Yes, that is true. He did come. I should have put that, especially from
Yeah.
south of the United States.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that he walked through circles. These people, I mean, you know, all the things Trump did, very rare to be able to direct the thing to Trump. Modi, but get it, he's much smarter than Trump.
Yeah.
He almost operates like the mob.
Understand.
Okay? And that's what I'm saying. I should have known. It's my fault. I missed the Islam, I missed the Muslim, but the blacks to me stand out. I mean, there is not of India, all of it, look at what is happening in France, the conservative don't want to throw all this. So the Swedes, I cannot talk about Hungary, there is a strong man, who is literally so right wing that he's all of that.
I want to ask about the militaristic.
Christina always says I'm very loud, so I think I come to believe that.
Military.
Okay. Yes, who was there? Somebody? Oh, yes, go ahead, Jean.
I want to ask about the militaristic part because I understand that, for example, Trump wants to nuke the world and that sort of thing. But I also think it's kind of interesting in that it seems to me that one of the things the hearings are pointing out is that the military was in the background and not particularly supportive of some of the shenanigans. And that at this point, Putin's in trouble with some of his generals because they don't like the way things are going.
Yes.
So how do you reconcile, I want to be militaristic, but unless I have a military that came into power with me and thinks that their fate is tied to my fate, how can you control that?
Well, you cannot control it overnight. You're not going to fire 1,500 generals and brigadiers and colonels. How you do it is grassroots. Now, not so long ago, a report came out. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Pew who said that in the American military, the right-wing thoughts or Trump, MAGA type thoughts are taking hold amongst the lower ranks. Because they're also coming from the societies or the who are prone to that thought. I mean, they're poor kids. I mean, Soros's grandson is not going and joining the military, neither is Trump's or anybody else's. All your lower, I mean, you're actually fighting men, usually come from poorer sections of the society, or, you know, they also in middle class, a lot of middle class kids going to there. But the point is that that fundamental change happens. So the point, these guys may come as second lieutenants or lieutenants or whatever, but in time they're going to become generals. And that is how actually, how in Pakistan it happened. Pakistan military used to be very secular. But Zia-ul Haq started an Islamization of the military. And he's long gone. He died in 80 or something like that. But now Pakistani military is extremely Islamic because the guys he recruited as lieutenants and second lieutenants, sorry, that's how we call them in India, under the British term, are now generals. The head of Pakistani army, Munir, General Munir, his father is a known Talibani. I'm sorry? So that is how it happens. Sorry. Same thing in India. It comes up through the, and Modi's big thing is that as he shows more and more economic progression, people tend to support him. Because suddenly their families are doing better, their society is doing better, everybody else is, and he has done a lot. I mean, I have to tell you, I mean, he has given free food to 80 million people. You know, build houses for them, made women's young girls' education free. He's very big on that. Always pushes, always talks about it. You know, internet to the rural areas. So they may be in the military, they may start off as being secular, but suddenly they say, hey, this guy is making my family's life so much better. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions over here. Frank, go ahead.
Thank you. What do I press?
Nothing, you're good. Just talk.
Okay. Why isn't the map of India red?
Because that is not India's color. Flag is not, there's no red in India's flag.
But it certainly isn't green.
That's how they played it. I did not place those countries. That's how they were placed. And I found that.
Would you have made it red or green if you got to print it?
I would have at this point made it more reddish green.
Made it what?
Because he has not, Modi has not dissolved the parliament. He is clever. He
Yes,
does
he
not
is.
dissolve the parliament. He sticks to the parliamentarian routine. But since he has a huge, I mean, his party holds 55% majority in the parliament. He can get any bills passed.
Again, he's a religious person.
So just because he's a religious person can't make it red. I mean, all the American presidents swear up and down how much Christian they are. So does that make this a red? Being, I mean, to say that yes, I'm a Hindu or I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim or I am none of the above. That is that if you're going to violate that, then you yourself are violating the right to free speech and religion and thought.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up quickly. We've got a couple more questions, but we may want to reserve them.
But to your question, I would have made India more reddish at this point than it is they're showing.
One an attraction that I would expect to see is one with a fraud background in economics and
I'm sorry, I don't get your question.
fraud. FRAUGHT, trouble.
Okay.
So a fraud background of the economy and the society. And a route to that is to muddy up the definition of truth, which is what
Trump has been doing in the press.
They've all done it. Trump is not the only one.
So,
Don't
but
get
that-
fixated on Trump. It is a common theme.
That makes the solution of authoritarian more promising, more appealing.
Well, it only works but if like Modi is the unique person as stands out, that if he can make the system work for people. I mean, my friends and classmates in India have a better lifestyle, more money than I do, though I'm a principal scientist at the AstraZeneca. So, and it has been, Modi has just, put the Indian economy on steroids.
Give you last
I mean,
question.
it's amazing.
We
And
got one-
frightening too.
One last question.
Yes, please.
And we're gonna find-
So it seems like a lot of the underpinnings of all of these strong men is misinformation, disinformation that spreads on social media.
Mhm.
And one of the factors that you identified in the first slide is anti-intellectualism.
Mhm.
A lot of the people who support, I'm going to stick with Trump because that's what I know best as an American. There's a lot of support for Trump among intellectuals, among people who are smart, who are educated, and they have to know that the information that they're looking at Trump on Fox News and those kinds of news, they have to know that a lot of what they're looking at is false. How do we explain that?
Well, because I explain it by saying that these people have realized that they have something to gain.
And they're not disenfranchised to begin with. What
Doesn't matter. They have something to gain by supporting what is his name? Trump or Modi or Putin or Erdogan. I think it is a personal choice. It is something they have to gain. And when I said anti-intellectual, it usually pinpoints those who are against them. The intellectuals who are against them, they're horrible intellectuals. They are subversives. They are communists. They are whatever. But the intellectuals for them are the darlings. And the people who have supported them, it's the same in India. Russia, it has happened. In Turkey, it has happened. In India, it has happened. There is a personal gain for them, whatever it is. Whether they will get a ministry or whether they will become special counselors to the cabinet, I don't know. But it is always associated with the person.
We're gonna have to wrap up because we're gonna run out of time.
Sorry.
Thank you. Let's give Atish a round of applause.
Sorry. I'll take that.
So I'm going to pass the baskets. We're all volunteer. We don't get any funding from anybody other than our members and friends in our baskets. Also, let me just point out that we do have a refreshment period and Atish will be around if people have additional questions or points or contrariisms that they want to share. Announcements. Do we have any announcements on the floor? Gretchen?
We will be having our Humanist Happy Hour this Wednesday in Pittsburgh at the Carolina Brewery, which has worked out quite well for us. We had like 13 people last month. It'll be 6 to 8. Try to send me a note online that you'll be coming so I have an idea how big a table we need. We were surprised last time, but it works out pretty well there. So please come and join us this Wednesday, 6 to 8, Carolina Brewery in Pittsburgh.
Other announcements?
I want to add one thing about Frank and Charmaine. They actually met here at our society, and we don't have too many long-term romances from our group, so we need to take credit where we can.
Keep your eye on the mail about baseball, maybe August 20. That's the 3rd. We'll see.
Next week is an all society platform from the AEU, so we will be virtual only. It's going to be the day after the assembly. So if people look exhausted, you'll know why. But the topic is, I had it up, but I've closed it. There's a camp outside Philadelphia that has been sponsored from the by the AEU for years. I think it's called the Encampment Project. And it's got a rich history. I think Eleanor Roosevelt was involved at some point in that project. So it'll be out in the newsletter. If you're members, you've already gotten something from the AEU, but it will be about that particular feature of the AEU. And I would like to thank our volunteers today, because volunteers are what make us able to be here every week. And they are greatly appreciated. And today we had as our greeter, Jean and John. I guess, Jean, are you the official one, or is it a duo? Or anyway, thank you for welcoming folks. Refreshments, Amy, and I think Christina helped a bit with getting those ready. And I hear Mary, I said Amy, I'm sorry. I knew Mary. My head was saying Mary. My mouth said something else. Anyway, it's ice cream. So yay. And I also want to thank Chris for being our Zoom guru as always. How many did we have on Zoom today? 5. Great. And Jay for doing opening and closing words. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay for closing words.
And in the interest of brevity, I will say thank you for inviting.
Okay. Inspirational. Thank you. All right. Well, our meeting is over, but our fellowship continues. Please join us for refreshments and chatting and any